I am so excited to see what happens over the course of the next couple days. And this is going to be a little bit different than a typical predictions video. This is more of a hope video, and it's really going to focus in on a handful of a couple games. So I'm going to talk about Blue Protocol, and I'm going to talk about Final Fantasy XIV, especially as it relates to Summer Game Fest news, and the potential for Xbox to be involved in any of that. But before I dive into that, I want to kind of talk to you guys about a little personal announcement here real quick. This weekend, Julie and I celebrate our 12th anniversary together. And beyond that, I'm also going to be taking the next week off of YouTube to kind of relax, recharge my batteries, and spend it with family. So guys, no pressure to do so, but if you hit like it, if you leave a comment wishing us a happy anniversary, that would mean the world to me. And I look forward to having lots of game conversations with you guys on the flip side of that. Now, you might see a video or two from me, depending if I get those finished and get those scheduled out. But regardless, if I don't reply to a comment, if you don't see me on Discord or on Twitter, just note that I haven't disappeared and I'll be back here within the week. And hopefully you guys will have a good week without me. Maybe there'll be a good break for both of us, and we'll see you guys here on the other side of it. But beyond that, I said I wanted to talk about two games. I want to talk about Final Fantasy XIV, and I want to talk about Blue Protocol. And as it relates to Xbox, that might seem a little bit strange. And obviously, I'm not sitting here saying that Xbox is buying Bandai Namco. But when I look at Xbox's product offering and content gap, I tend to think of, obviously, the Japanese market. As somebody who really enjoys JRPGs and has grown up playing Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, I just tend to think in kind of those terms, like, what does Xbox need to do? And there's a lot of games that Xbox needs to get. We still don't have Persona on the Xbox in the ecosystem there, and maybe that would be kind of like a mic drop moment. I honestly would be thrilled to see that game come to the Xbox, but I'm going to shift it really kind of the focus of Blue Protocol, because it's been well over a year since we've had any news on that game. Now, they're still developing it. I hope that that's going to be a game that knocks it out of the park, but when it comes to MMORPGs, you never really know. And I started to think about the potential for Xbox, and another company comes into play, and then yet Sony at the same time also could be an interesting kind of party, as they've announced that they're really striving to get 10 games as a service games up and running by 2025. And unless they've been working on those secretly for a long time, there's also the acquisition model, or being able to kind of bring that into their ecosystem model. So note that they're also out there as a part of this conversation. But as we go into Xbox, it would be an interesting thing to have. Now, Xbox has a relationship with Phantasy Star Online 2. I still think that game needs to come to PlayStation as well. And also with new content updates for NGS, note that I'll be jumping back into Phantasy Star Online probably here in July as we explore it and jump in together over the summer months. So feel free to join us if you're interested in that kind of game. But in terms of Blue Protocol, while I still think the game is a while away, it would be interesting to see if Microsoft starts taking kind of a marketing lead in that aspect. You have an anticipated game, you have something that is that a lot of fans are already just eagerly waiting for news, so it could be a real big mic drop moment. I've also kind of speculated sometimes, like, what is Microsoft going to do within the Japanese ecosystem? Are they going to ever acquire? Can they acquire? I know a lot of theories get floated that they can't purchase a Japanese company, which doesn't seem to be like any written law. That just seems to be some kind of just general thought that everybody has when there's precedence that it actually is not the case. But beyond that specific kind of topic, it would be wild to see that, or kind of the mystery company that I kind of wonder, especially as it relates to Blue Protocol, which wouldn't appear on an Xbox stage, would be Amazon. Amazon's got a big relationship right now with RPG site. Why am I blanking on their name? Smilegate. I was like, oh my gosh, like I literally had it on the top of my tongue and then just completely flubbed that one. Anyhow, let's continue. But they already have a relationship with them, and they are the publisher for Blue Protocol in Korea. So that all being said, is that is one of the games that I really, from a hopium perspective, that we actually finally get some information and some news, and it would be such a unique twist and honestly create a lot of buzz if Microsoft was kind of the leading platform. Now, obviously, if it isn't Microsoft, I do wonder if we'll see Amazon over the course of the next week. Lost Ark and New World, obviously very topical. Anytime you talk about New World, you're either going to get one of two reactions. Either you love it or you hate it. And that's going to be something that's going to drive the internet crazy, at least until Amazon decides and really kind of reveals what their future plans are for that game. All right, I've kind of wasted enough time, and that wasn't really the goal on that subject. I'm going to shift to the Final Fantasy XIV topic, namely because of kind of two things. Will we see Final Fantasy XIV on Xbox? And trust me, like when I say I want it on Xbox, I would love to be wrong with what I'm about to say. But when we look at it with all the information that has been publicly given to us by Yoshi P and by Phil Spencer, every publicly made statement sounds like it's going to be. In fact, to catch everybody up to speed, you don't need to know the history from 2013 to now. You just need to know is that Yoshi P and Phil Spencer both want Final Fantasy XIV on Xbox. The question ends up being is that Yoshi P has stated that he doesn't have the physical resources to make that a reality in terms of bringing Final Fantasy XIV to the Xbox. I've heard internally that they actually have it running on the Xbox, being that that would actually make sense in order to test that. But you think about the logistics of releasing and having patches ready and having them certified, it ends up becoming a bigger headache than you might imagine. And Yoshi P stated they don't have the resources. I've stated, Phil Spencer, open up your wallet. But there's also this other budding relationship between Square Enix and Sony as they continue to get closer and closer. So that then also brings up the theory that Final Fantasy XIV might be being paid to be kept off of Xbox, which in a way that means that that's probably a nice, decent paycheck, because you think about the recurring revenue that would come from a subscription. I don't think it's necessarily feasible. I think it's honestly a resource cost that we saw with servers, and then what we saw, obviously, like as he put out the roadmap, that more NA servers are going to be coming online this summer and then later in the spring. And then you obviously have the mid-cycle expansion. We haven't seen them add a platform outside of PS4 and PS5 that didn't happen at the launch of the game itself. And I think that's obviously within reason. I think essentially when you're looking at an expansion, that's a perfect time for them to add in another system. They added the Mac in with an expansion, and that seems to make sense. But I still, part of me, a big hope of me, a big part of my I guess, being would love to see Final Fantasy XIV finally on the Xbox platform. I think that would benefit Final Fantasy XIV players. I think that benefits Square Enix. I think that benefits Xbox players. I think that overall benefits the ecosystem. And then heck, even if Sony is to acquire Square Enix, it'd be great to still have that as additional customers who are paying for your game as a service, who are paying for that game to help fund the game and your bigger global schemes of world domination. I think they're all vying for it, so I'm not necessarily trying to dig at Sony. I'm just legitimately, I think they're all kind of vying for each and every one of those things. Now, as my voice seems to fail me, as we dive in, to the idea, the only thing I would say in terms of like why I don't feel like it's going to be, the year that they announce it, and I hope I'm wrong. I'd be so happy. I'll be so happy if I'm wrong. But it's that typically in the past, we've seen these kind of interviews and these kind of questions already leading up to it. I think we've already, and that's kind of where, who knows, maybe the fact that we haven't seen these questions, etc., ends up being why they'll announce it. But we've seen interviews with Phil Spencer being asked about Final Fantasy XIV. We've seen interviews with Yoshi P. We haven't seen or heard anything along those lines this year alone. So, I think essentially, like, if there was going to be another round of excitement and hype and potential, that obviously builds up to whatever 7.0 is going to be. And I think obviously, as Square Enix has stated that they'll spare no expense, maybe that does mean and bode well for the future of 14. But with 16 on the horizon, and with obviously it seeming like that's PS5 exclusive, at least for a period of time, obviously time will tell, but always have hope, always be excited. That's just the two things I wanted to talk about today. A little bit random, a little bit hopeful. I might actually do a reaction to the Xbox event. It just depends on how the rest of my weekend goes and what Julie and I's plans are. But beyond that, I appreciate you guys being here. I hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully I'll see you in my next one. But until then, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better.